G'day guys, welcome back to In My Shed. I'm BC. Just a little bit of basics 101 on tool sharpening before we get back onto the Sonoco grinder. I got the parts washer going. Hooray! It was right down in the last item I got to, the bloody strainer to the pump, and there's a little outlet channel past the strainer where the pump output goes, and it's got a biological growth in amongst that horrible cleaning fluid. How, I don't know, but my old friend's back. Okay, one-on-one. There's two common bench stones available. There's the old grey and dark grey version, which is silicon carbide. This is aluminium oxide. It says aluminium oxide, coarse and fine combination stone. There's not too many variations available now because hand sharpening has gone by the way. Look, silicon carbide will do this job, but it's not as good on steel in my opinion. That includes high-speed steel. It's a much harder, sharper abrasive, but it's very fragile. It's like a lot of ladies. It'll break down very easy, form a skin of crushed abrasive grain, and you'll also get big divots in your stone. Now I'm rejuvenating my few hand scrapers before we get stuck into the bed on the grinder, and by the way, that's going to come up, I think, fairly good. Now the darker stone is usually the coarse stone, and these scrapers are originally hollow ground. They're meant for scraping out bearings, but they're also good for what I'm doing at the moment. I'm up to finishing. Good thing about them is when you're taking the face down, because it's hollow ground, you only grind a very small amount along the edges there, and also you can see how effective you're being by the sharp finish or the bright finish that you get there. So I'll tilt the camera down just a little bit and then give you a bit more of a rundown. I'm also using the GoPro today because it's got a much wider field of view, and I've had a lot of trouble getting what I'm talking about into the picture. Okay, very simple job to do, and I'll go back over on the fine stone. You want to get both sides done equally. You want to get a finish that will scrape the shite off but not cut the cast iron, if that makes any sense. It's got to be a reasonable edge but not an aggressive edge. Now you can usually feel where you are on the stone. Put a couple of fingers down, you'll feel it go flat. Get used to the feel of the stone, and all I do is just progressively drop the back of the scraper as you go forward. Now this scraper had been used and abused long before I got it, and you could see the cutting edge. It was very, very dull, and you could see that it was about 1 millimetre wide along the edge there. So I had to take a lot off with the coarse stone. A sharp edge is an edge that you can't see. You'll see the shine of the lapped or ground edges either side of it, but you won't see the cutting edge, and you'll feel it when it starts to come up. So that's very, very easy to do. The other shaper I have is a lot more aggressive for bearing shells, and it's got a very, very hollowed out centre. But I think these will be good for getting into any corners I have on the table to try and get the shite up off it, and that's going to be a mammoth of a job. Also, that shite is very abrasive to tools like this, so I'll be back here sharpening again. Now this particular shaper has just an almost indiscernible radius across the front. It's square edged, and it's meant for getting down very, very low to the job, so that you're aggressive towards what you're trying to remove, be it gaskets or clean the surface up like we'll be doing. If you want to take material off, you lift the back, and it will take a thou or half a thou off at a time, so it's not all that aggressive. But I find these are clips, by the way. The clips are more than right. I've got the wrong specs on. Very, very good product. And all I do with these is get it up to where I think is as close to vertical I can get, and just move it along the stone. You then check what you're doing, and if, like this one, you have a lot of scum and rust across the edge, you'll soon pick up where you're grinding, whether you go forward or backwards, So just hold it down near the bottom and at the top to keep it as vertical as you can, and just grind it along. So very, very basic. On these sorts of tools I prefer the high-speed steel stones, and also my little deburring stones for the high-speed steel tools after I've ground them. They're all aluminium oxide, usually around 320 grit, and that gives a really good finish. Okay, enough of this guff. Let's move around, quick squeeze what's in the parts washer, and then out to cleaning the tables. Well guys, guess where I spent a bit of time today? It's all of the real stuff that you don't want to have to clean by hand. It's engine mount bolts for that cylindrical grinder, little covers, handles, things that have been neglected and thrown in a box for 30 odd years, so they've collected a hell of a lot of goop. This is a aqueous solution, and that doesn't mean that it's nice and water like you can wash it off with water, but geez, it's aggressive on your hands. But yeah, glad to have this little thing up and running again. It makes life a lot easier. Okay, off to the grinder. Back again guys, and just thought I'd show you a few other helpers I've got. Used to sell this stuff. I've got a little bit of it. This is a inline electric die grinder. They're not really fabulous. They're not anywhere near as good as the Makita's Hitachi's, any of those. However, one big difference, they're much lower maximum RPM. They have a drill chuck on the front, and they're cheap, which makes them easy to use. Now, I can zoom around and get into a lot of places around here, which makes it easy getting rid of the bog and the paint, also getting the yuck off the table. And as most of the mechanism that you don't want the yuck into is shielded by the table, I can throw it around. I will throw a cover over my mill and probably the radial drill. Some of the other things that I've got, and I don't know whether you're familiar with or not, you're probably not familiar with a paint scraper. They represent hard work. The younger guys might not know that. This is a combination wheel. It's 80 grit aluminium oxide cloth and Scotch-Brite intermixed. That's fairly worn, just about knackered, but it gives a nice gentle feel. If you want to take a bit of bad paint off and you don't want to destroy the surface too much, they're quite a good item. That's a washer one side mop on a baby, no it's stuck in there, on a baby tapered spindle. I've got to get that, it's just crooked as hell. Okay, being maroon Scotch-Brite, it's aluminium oxide, about 180 grit equivalent. It's quite gentle, it's good at removing paint and scum, and if you're up against edges like that, you're not going to destroy the edge. So that's quite a good open item. Very open coat, and it's going to throw the shite out, I hope. A couple of small flap wheels, whatever grit they are has been worn off them a long while ago. Oh no, that's 80 grit. So also good for in and around the curves, etc. They'll clog up with paint fairly quick, but a quick grind on the concrete or on a brick will clean them up. And last but not least, very aggressive stripper wheel. You can get these for 5-inch angle grinders. I don't know about 5-inch angle grinders I know of, and 75mm on a stalk, and then these little roll lock items. Very aggressive. They're meant for stripping paint and rust. They will take a little bit of metal, so you've got to be quite judicious in how you use them. Now I've gone over a fair bit on this side, and what I was getting with the paint scraper is the old Brown's Gunge. So I'm not lifting up cast iron, I'm just taking the yuck off. And when I get down to surfaces like this, it's actually fairly good cast iron. I'll bring you down in a sec so you can have a look at what it's like after you scrape the surfaces a bit. Now I still haven't got on to the engineer scrapers. I want to get all the yuck off first so I can see what's happening. And there's no good dulling a good engineer scraper getting yuck like that off. Now I'm pretty convinced that a lot of what I'm lifting here, if not all of it, isn't material off the table. I'm pretty sure a lot of that is material that's been ground off with the cylindrical grinder, gone in with the fluid, and then sat into every crevice that it could creep into. Keep your bloody pants on, for God's sake. And gone rusty, and gradually it goes rusty, swells up, separates the tables a little bit, and that allows more shine to come in. Okay, enough gas bagging for the moment. I'll wipe this off and bring the camera down and show you a bit more of the table. I know you've had a look already, but you haven't seen it when it's got a lot of the rubbish off. Okay, here you are, brought back in again. I did give this part of the table a little bit of a tickle with the scraper, and I've also soaked the table with the degreaser out of the can. It's good stuff. It really is. It lifts the shite off well. And you can see here I'm scraping up a bit of the surface material, but nothing's coming off the table. This poor old paint scraper has seen much better days, and I'm not going to put a good edge on it, because if I can remove most of the yuck with tools like this without damaging the table, I'm going to be a very happy lad. Now, I'm not a professional machine tool builder like a couple of the guys on the net. I wouldn't even try to introduce flaking with a scraper. All I would do would be bozo it up a little bit. But I'll bring you down to have a look at this. It's almost good enough to call a machine tool surface. Okay, camera off and I'll bring you back in. Okay, I don't have zoom on this camera, but while you're there, and I'll swing the light around a little bit, that should be a bit better. You can see what I just took off with the paint scraper. And you can see how little is coming off with the engineer scraper. And that makes me smile, because so far I'm picking up all good cast iron surface. Now, there are a couple of spots across the table that do look a little bit sad, but this is one of the main contacting surfaces. And if they all come up like this, I'll be as happy as Larry. But the life of this scraper will be extended by using the paint scraper first and getting rid of the bulk of the shite. So far I don't think I've lifted any of the parent cast iron. So even though I've gone over it with the paint scraper, there's still just a little bit of poo in around dowel pins, etc. And this is one place J&S really did think. That dowel pin is stuck inside the body, and the other dowel pin comes away with the end plate. Makes it a little bit easier to get things apart. Yep. Okay, I'm happy. You can see a few little scratches from my dodgy scraping. I'll move you along a bit and we'll have a look at some of the less handsome parts of the table. Okay guys, this is some of the more doubtful stuff. Well, so far I'm smiling again. Up to there is reasonable metal. I think this will recover quite well. We'll try that a little bit further up. Now that's got some of the worst scalding on the top of the lower table. Now I think I'm in luck again. Yep, I think that will scrape up to be quite reasonable table surface. I might even put a bit of vinegar on there to try and treat it chemically. But that's what we're up against. I hope you like seeing what we're doing here. Okay, time for me to stop being a movie star and do a little bit of work. As I do each individual part, I'll bring you in to have a look. I'll show you what the individual tools work like and what I can do with them. I'll start on the table probably Thursday or Friday, and then I'll roll the table over and we'll see what sort of damage is underneath. But from what I can see on that particular part of the table, I don't have to get 100% contact to make me happy. If I can get 75 to 85%, I'm going to be very smiling about that. And this bit of mechanism here is what goes into the dovetails to slide the top table on a pivot, and it come out in as new condition, which surprises me because it's steel, not cast iron. So I think a little bit of grunting, a bit of swearing, it'll all come out quite good. Okay, bring it back in a day or two. Well, a bit of handheld photography today. This is the progress so far. Still a bit grubby, but I'm seeing reasonable metal underneath almost all of it. Takes a lot of scraping, and I found that spray can degreaser to be really good. Just a few more cleans and that part will come up really well. That's starting to look okay, and that's what just came out of this tray at the front here. Still awful under there, but over the rear that's been recovered. That will get there, I'm pretty sure. This is very stubborn, but the outer edge is okay. So that's fairly important to me. All along the back here is okay. And the area where you set the taper angle is done. So all in all, I think this will be a resto. I'll have one more go with the degreaser, especially at this end of the table. And then I'll set about it with the little handstone, that fellow there, and some kerosene, which is what brought this part of the table up. It's a slow process, but if you use any power tools, you bugger the job. But so far, yep, I'm pleased. If the underside of the table comes up as good as this, I'm going to have a fantastic machine. Bring it back again. G'day guys, back again. Just going to close off this journey through cleaning up the grinder with a little bit of an episode on how I've checked the table. It's been a mammoth job for me. I had no way to clean it before I brought it in, and I definitely can't. I pressure blasted in here and put shit everywhere. I might have done that as a first year apprentice, but not now. It's in surprisingly good condition. I haven't got to the swiveling top table yet, but I have cleaned up the main table. And at first I was a bit concerned with stains I couldn't understand on the surface, and it's what's left of the original scraping. And so far it's quite good. I've run over that with a couple of doses of degreaser, and the caustic has managed to pull most of the crap up out of the flaking. And I'll bring you down and give you a look at what I've done. My reference is a World War II, I'm pretty sure it's a Moore and Wright 40-inch straight edge, 40 inch by half inch by thick 2.5, 3 inch, and I bought it unused. It came in a big cardboard wrapper and a box around that, and it's still got the original paper and bloody grease on it. I'm not going to take it apart, I only use one inch of it. I've never put that on a granite surface table, so I can't guarantee that it's perfect, but so far it seems to be repeatable on the job. And what I have done is I've mapped out a little bit of a test on top of the table with my very accurate metrology feeler gauges, and I've put down the results I've got there, and I'll let you come in and have a look. I've also roughly placed the straight edge across the table and tried to balance it weight end for end and come up with some reasonably good results. The rubbish that was on the surface would have had to have been 99% what came off the workpieces, because there's very little come off the table, if anything at all, and the way it's coming up here is pretty well beyond belief. But I'll get back to the camera and bring you in here for a closer look, and you can see the zeros and 1.5s, and I'll point them out to you if they don't come up good enough on the camera. I'll remove the straight edge. No, just put it to the back of the table, I think that'll be good enough. Let's hope I don't do a donkey pin and knock it over. So back in a sec, we'll have a closer look. Okay, we're a bit closer up to the table. I'll point the numbers out to you and read them out, and then bring you in as close as I can possibly get, maybe freehand, for a look at the surface. But as I said, I'm reasonably impressed. Get out of the way of the spotlight. And you've got to appreciate there remain contact areas for this table, and also it's only still up on blocks, wooden blocks. It hasn't been levelled, so I don't know that that would create too much of a difference here. The small amount that's been hit by corrosion I'm not worrying about. Okay, extreme right hand end, we've got 0, 0 and 0, and crosswise and longitudinally 0, 0, 0, 0. On the front it's 0, 0 here, 0, and midspan 0. So that region is coming up fairly good. We've got 0 here, 0, 0 here, and 0 at midspan. So I'm reasonably happy with the way that's come up. I'm down 1.5 thou both here and here, down 1.5 here and 1.5 here. So having a 0 here, a 0 here and a 0 at the centre pivot makes me think I've still got a good machine. And there's a 0 underneath the feeler gauges. Okay, we'll swing around to the other side now. I hope that brings you into view. This GoPro, it really goes for a pro when you swing it around. Okay, on the front, we've got a 1.5 dip there and a 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So that whole flange area is zeroed out. A 0 here, 1.5 down, both 1.5 down here, 0 at the back. Now on this end, it's got a bit of a wave in it because I did have quite a lot of corrosion that I scraped out. You can still see a lot of flaking, so I don't know how there's a whoopee doing the casting, but I've got a 0 there and there, 0 there, 3 zeros there. -3 in both those spots, and -1.5 there. And I'm surprised there's any difference because I can still see the flaking through there, and I would assume that to be just a couple of tenths of a thou, unless it's just decorative, but that's unlike the POMs. So I would say over the years of use, this thing has just relaxed. It's quite a big casting. It's done about 3 or 4 million reciprocations, so I'll be feeling a little bit sad if I've done that sort of work. But so far, yeah, reasonably happy. I've had to try and get rid of most of the paint. It's not only a terrible paint job, but the body filler under it is just, it's bubbling up in places. So I don't know whether it's just old age or the degreasing agent. And I've got to wash it down fairly often because it's aluminium case in the front here, and I don't want to leave caustic cleaning agent on that for an extended period of time. Okay, I'll turn the camera off and then try and get you up for a closer look at the finish. Okay, here we are back again, and 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. That's where the swivel adjuster, angle adjuster runs. It's a V-groove item that slides through there and drags the table with it. So I would have expected this particular surface to have taken quite a lot of work over the years pulling the table around for tapers, but it's in surprisingly good condition. Very, very smooth. Surface finish is lovely, and it comes up reasonably flat. You can't put a 1.5 feeler gauge underneath it. Okay, move you along, said Batman. Section off to the left of that, this is where there was the most corrosion visible. That bolt head was completely covered over with exfoliated rust, and I'm 1.5 thou down there, but I'm 0 either side, 0 here and 0, 0, so I think the table will level itself out. And if you can appreciate, we're grinding between 2 points, not along the table like you are on surface grinding. So as long as you can get the workpiece to indicate in very well between your grinding centres or the chuck and the tailstock, you're going to come up with a respectable job. Okay, a bit further along. Once again, this area was just, I must have been 1.5 millimetres a gunge. How the top table isn't bent to hell, I don't know, but I managed to come back with a nice flat Moronite scraper, and the surface finish there is really, really good. Once again, I think all of these brown dots are what's left in the flaking. And one last look up the other end. And I'm sorry to wobble you around like that while I move you, but the rear screen goes off on this thing to save battery. Okay, this is a bit of a weird one. Along the rib line of the table, 0, 0, 0 and 3 zeros. On this side, I'm down 1.5, and just along the edge of the rib there, it's -3. That I can't explain because the flaking is fairly even all the way across. There's no great apparent wear, but this is where the workhead would sit up on top. And I had a lot of weight. I think that would have to be 80 kilograms. I know it's a heavy shit of a thing to get off. So anyway, I'm happy with it. I'll be giving it another degrease before lunch, and then I'll come back over, wash it all down, and then I can start sanding, getting it ready for paint. Well, I hope that's something that you wanted to see. I know that this is one hell of a job. It's so heavy and it's a lot of work, and I've sworn that this and the Haro TNC grinder will be the last major machine clean-up that I undertake from now on. I've got to get onto building loco parts and chucking a bit of steam up chimneys. So I hope you've enjoyed coming along. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hello to all the guys at the US of A, and another episode in 4 or 5 days. See you then.